Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next show. We are going to talk about what I believe is one of the most important issues facing the country right now, and that is the unprecedented metabolic health catastrophe, and how I personally believe, and I believe my two distinguished colleagues here also believe, that the answers lie in actually looking back at what previous generations used to do, dare I say, many of you watching. So we're going to dive into this and talk about how we can reverse the current crises that we have on our hands. And for those of you who enjoy our discussions, please check in the links down below. We have our own channel where we talk about a lot of these types of issues and important topics affecting your health. So let's dive right in then. Why is the crisis so bad, and what did previous generations get so right?
Well, I think there's a lot of things you can look at, but one thing that I think is really important is just food in general. And I know we talk about food a lot, but there was no fast food, period. I mean, I don't think that, if you go back to certain generations, most meals were home cooked meals. There wasn't really a big thing where you would stop by a drive-through and get a burger and fries and bring it for the entire family. So I think that was a concept we developed later on. And I think that's something that's hurt us a lot.
Yeah, I think overall we've sort of confused convenience with nutrition, and that's really been lacking. And I remember food wasn't always as addictive as it is now, and in earlier generations, food wasn't addictive at all. We didn't hear about red dye number, so and so, and all the processed foods we have, and we didn't really have to count calories really back then.
We didn't know people ate real food. I mean, when I was growing up, around the same time as you two, 80s and 90s, it was a rarity to actually eat out. And I'm sure previous generations, you go back to the 50s, 60s, ate out even less. And everybody used to eat at home. It was real home-cooked food. And we can't really overstate how much of a cultural shift this is. Now, every other young person is eating out multiple times every week. And restaurants, in my opinion, don't have much incentive to pick anything other than the cheapest ingredients.
Yeah, that's so true what you said about the cultural shift, Suneel, because that was such an important part of our culture of just growing up. And I know I did when I was younger, is having dinner with your family and that time. And that has really gone by the wayside. We have so many endless options. We have DoorDash. You can order out from any other restaurant. And, you can supersize your drinks. You have bottomless fries. Everything is just changed. But that cultural shift of dinner as a way of communicating with your family, as opposed to now, it's more of convenience and really just lacking like nutritional awareness.
Really,
yeah,
so downhill.
Well, I think one of the other thing that's reversed that's really interesting too is that the more whole foods, so just kind of basic meats and vegetables and things, are actually more expensive and often harder to get than the fast food, than the stuff that's kind of more poisonous, and most of it's synthetic. So, it's what happens in time if you hand over everything to kind of a big food or a big corporation. What they're going to do is synthesize it. They're going to find cheaper, easier ways to make it that is more addictive. They do not have your best interests in mind. So I think the way that we look at food, the way that we consume food, the way that we become addicted to food, I think has changed in a very big way.
It's very true. Yeah. And I would like everybody watching to think about this. Go back to when you were growing up, your class, and there might have been, shall we say, one larger person in your whole class. And you probably hadn't heard of your peers when you were adolescents getting type 2 diabetes. And now these diseases are soaring. And this is such a massive catastrophe because all these kids now in 10 years, in their late 20s and early 30s, are all going to have a mass of different pathologies as a result. And it comes back to real food. How about portion sizes? This plays into it as well. When we were growing up, we had very small portions compared to now.
And so you have a great insight into that growing up in Europe as well. And I spent time in Europe, and what you do realize is a starter is a starter. And in the States now, a starter is really a meal for two people. And that's one thing that I really noticed. And between, look at the grocery stores when you're in Europe compared to coming back to the States. You have endless aisles of cereal, processed foods, labels that had 8 ingredients, 20, 30 years ago now, or have like 30 or 40 ingredients. And it's just, and that all ties with just like foods become more addictive and portions become larger. I think Like our, you know, restaurants, are praised for giving bigger portions as well.
They are. Yeah, that's very much a culture. And I've said this before. I know we've had these discussions, but we can talk about food corporations, processed foods, etc. But when the simple fact is that people are eating thousands of calories more than they burn off, if you're doing that, it doesn't really matter what you eat. I know processed foods are more addictive, but the sheer amounts, let's be honest,
Yeah,
that people are eating, what do we expect to happen?
yeah. I mean, what we expect to happen is what we're seeing is a shift in generations that may not live as long as a prior generation with an influx of diabetes and unfortunately obesity and we see it coming.
Well, Sunil, you've talked about this a few times, and there's actually a lot to talk about this issue, but the basically allowance of endless sugar to be placed in really different kinds of foods that are marketed to children and adults without making it very clear that there is this much sugar in the foods has been going on for a while now, and it really is outrageous. I mean, to be placing, these sodas that where you have half of it's basically sugar, and not telling people that and not warning people about what this is going to do to you is outrageous. And there really hasn't been a big effort to cut down on that. And I think Big Sugar is somebody that needs to be reckoned with as well.
Yeah, and that's really, in the States and all of you out there, like from other countries, will realize, that's always maybe not the case with the sugar content. I mean, you get, like I was, at a soccer game with my son last night, and one thing that was just so striking to me was the amount of younger people that were overweight. And he wanted a soda, and that's always a battle. But he got a soda. It was actually from a different country. I just assumed that it was all dyes in it and stuff like that, but it actually was vegetable coloring and natural cane sugar, which kind of, not that it necessarily made it like all that much better because there's still sugar in it, but it just shows you, like, especially in the States, we've kind of lost our way. And I think that's something that's been lost in this generation, that previous generations, we didn't have to face all that and these choices. And so,
Yeah.
It's true. And that's actually a good segue into what I wanted to move on to next, because sugar, yes, I agree, sugar intake is astronomical. But I remember when I was growing up, we had Coca-Cola. I used to drink Coca-Cola all the time, but I drank small amounts of it. And it was clear that you were not able to drink more, big portions, big glasses. And also, it wasn't a thing to go and get this massive soda. It wasn't even available. So I would like to tie this into the big cultural shift that everything is in excess, but also let's come back to the calorie issue, which is always going to be there. People not moving around. So how many of you watching grew up after school, you would go spend time outdoors and you would be running around and you would be engaging with other children in the neighborhood.
oh yeah,
And that's huge. And kids are not doing that now. They're addicted to screens and they're sedentary.
it's true. I mean, you came home at dusk, right? I mean, it's kind of this whole movement of sort of, I guess I describe it like dirt to digital, where in the past kids would always, we'd just be outside. I mean, we were, boredom was normal and actually a good thing. And now, I think earlier, the younger generation now, if they're not on some type of electronic, boredom is a bad thing. And that's actually, boredom is great. It inspires like creativity but yeah, I mean, there's just so many ways we can go with this.
Peter, you need to get into politics here and write campaign slogan.
I know.
Great. It's to digital. Did you hear that? That's so
I think you'll all remember
I
that.
produced that in one of my videos.
Yeah.
Dirt to digital. We've seen that happen. I mean, what a sea change. I mean, we had computer games, but we used to be outdoors much more. We certainly didn't have handheld devices. And I appreciate it's a real struggle for parents nowadays.
Well, it is, and I think the problem with screens and all that is parenting's very hard, and everybody that's a parent understands that, I think. But and to have that option where you can give them the screen and they take the screen and they're good, that it's. I think a lot of parents fall prey to it, and you give them the screens, and all their friends are doing it, and I think we've walked into that culture. And I know schools are aware of this, I know parents are aware, but giving kids these screens and letting them sit for hours and hours and hours, there's so much to be learned outside. Just like you said, I really like that boredom, is actually can be a good thing. That's where people learn, new skills and different things that they didn't know they wanted to explore, I think. And that's when you get more active. You go outside, you're forced outside. And you're right. I think that's a huge thing that's lost.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to interrupt this fantastic discussion for a moment to tell you about our amazing expanding natural supplement store, my uniquely formulated natural supplements. We have immune support, bone support, memory support, heart support, and sleep support. Links down below. High quality supplements. We're very proud to be made in the USA, and we work with a veteran-owned company. I'm also very excited. Keep an eye out for this, our upcoming organic chai tea mix, based on the tea that I've been consuming for many years, a health and well-being tea. ohighwellness.com if you're in the USA, North America, ohighwellness.co if you're in the UK, Europe. Check the links down below. Okay, back to the discussion.
There was a fascinating photo I saw by an artist who all his photography was based on taking the iPhone out of people's hands, but they're all in the same position. So you have this room full of people and they're all just looking down, but he just, obviously what it looks like without iPhones. And it's just crazy if we were to look at that and see it. And I think, there's just, it's mind blowing how
it is. What a change. And it's just happened over the last 15 years. I don't think it's any accident that rates of obesity and illness have exploded exponentially over the last 15 years since the iPhone started. And I think the pandemic made everything 10 times worse. Everybody locked up, not doing well mentally. And it's just a very sad situation that most youngsters don't grow up as we did, going outdoors. And yeah, we used to come home at dusk and it was very safe.
Oh, yeah.
Go out in the neighborhood and just play.
We didn't pay $8 for a bottle of water. I mean, I drank out of hoses when I was younger. We used to take our bike and we'd just come back, and when it was getting dark out, we didn't have to worry about a lot of things we worry about now. So
yeah. So that's a big change. Let's talk about some other factors here. So we've touched upon food, portion sizes. We should also add probably snacking was not such a big thing when we were growing up, less time outdoors. What do you gentlemen think about just the levels of stress, even from a young age, compared to what many who grew up from the 1950s to 1990s? Well,
one thing I want to say is I think some of it has to do with two phenomenon. One is the way that news channels operate. And I think the advent of 24/7 news became very pathologic. And the reason is they learned that, in order to sell more news, you have to scare people because fear is a great sales tool. So they scare more people and then they're on 24/7. So all these news channels are on 24/7, pumping you full of fear. And what you see is the vast majority of the population now has some form of stress, I think, from that. And I would also say that the jobs, thanks to the iPhone and things like that, can get you 24/7. So people used to go to work, they were at work, and then they come home and they're with their family. Not anymore. That phone follows you. So work follows you 24/7. You have people sitting at home still working on the computer, still on the phone. So I think these two things really created a heightened level of stress that really didn't exist before this to that degree.
And that's so true, Ben. And really the advent of iPhones and really like social media in a sense, just the addiction to the iPhone is really, it's just a hard disconnect from work and home life. And I think you can't really get away. And I think that, the added stress from that, and then also the other things on, comparing yourself to other people that you see online and that's been, lead to a lot of different things, bullying and depression. And I think that's a huge topic as well.
True. I mean, social media does that. I mean, many good things come out of social media. Remember, a lot of you can only watch certain things, watch us because of social media channels. And we learn all the time from social media. So there's always the good with the bad, but you get to a point where sometimes the bad outweighs the good. And yeah, so social media will appeal to the worst instincts, wanting the dopamine release. You want constant thrills. You can't sit quietly, comparison to others. And in terms of children now, I mean, maybe you got some views on this as well. Would you say that this culture is tougher on boys or girls? It's a great discussion growing up, or equal in different ways.
That's a really great topic. I mean, I think, being a father as well, this hits home. I do think that it's actually both. All right. I know that, young, men and, you, and it's about algorithms, right? And so it's really about like, the younger generations now are online and it finds out what they're looking at. So then they think that whatever they're looking at is the reality around them. Like, so say, like, I know that my sister had concerns because, now her son's a teenager. He's kind of getting into, wellness and lifting. And then what starts popping up on his algorithm and all this social media is, people that are in really good shape. And some of them are probably like ultra filtered and you can't really get that. And you become this whole, body dysmorphic and dysmorphia. And this is a whole dark road we could talk about as they go down, but it's just, that's like on the male side. And the female side is pretty obvious with like the filtering, of, pictures and then also just the, just the bullying that happens as well is so.
Yes.
Well, I think there's something about being faceless, right? So when we all used to have to be face to face, it was, much more difficult to tease somebody or say something because you could get in a fight and then you need to be prepared for that. So, but online you can say anything and do anything and you can be anonymous and you can, so I think there's a lot of that bullying. I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on. So, there was something important about being face to face with people and having conversations directly to people that I think we're losing, when it comes to all that interaction or to the computer.
Yeah, we all did that. And I would say that, meat addiction is huge. And one big thing, and this is, I guess, sort of a plug, but, my sister has been really involved in something called MAMA, which is Mothers Against Media Addiction. And for you all out there, if you guys have kids or grandkids, it's actually a really, really great organization to check out because it really highlights all the stuff we just touched on really quickly, but you can go into a lot of depth on it about just how it affects us, how it affects earlier generations and future generations and kids. And so it's a great organization.
It's so important. I mean, my own thought is that the generations who grew up in different times, say any time from the 1950s to early 2000s, which were very different, are going to be the ones to potentially lead us out of this. I know many people in those generations have let themselves go. Sadly, it's the truth. But the current generation has known nothing else. So you take someone who's a teenager now, and this is so important, those of you watching, whether you have children, grandchildren, to really try your best. I know often, youngsters don't listen, but try to be that role model and encourage all of these habits, get away from the screens, get outdoors. And I personally believe that what we're seeing is so intrinsically linked to a cultural and spiritual crisis, not necessarily in terms of religion, although one could argue for that too, but just a complete loss of meaning in so many young people because of our current atmosphere, sadly. And you have to remember when young people, teenagers and 20-year-olds lose the desire to stay in shape, as we're seeing now, and it's not just a cosmetic issue, this is a health issue, start getting pre-diabetes, other inflammatory diseases, eating garbage, not moving. We have to ask ourselves as a society and a culture, what happened? Because usually throughout history, it is the youngsters who always want to look good.
Right.
90% of them are like, I have to look good. I want to be in shape. I want to be healthy. What's happened? What has happened?
Yeah, why has our society become unhealthier as time goes on? It should be the opposite. We know more. We have way more information and access to information about nutritional content and all the dangers of like food addiction, but yet are we actually following those? Are we using those tools because society is not getting healthier, right?
And not. No.
Well, one could argue that the very people who are supposed to be leading the charge in this area, they're supposed to be telling us, what's safe and unsafe, and have kind of turned away, and that's the physician community. Us as physicians should be spending most of our days, banging the bars and saying, hey, look, this is not okay. My patients are sick. I've had enough. This needs to change. I need to get out there. And you're not hearing that. You don't hear the big medical societies speaking out against this stuff. Not really. You don't hear a lot of individuals, physicians speaking out against this. So I would say, the medical community as a whole has, I think, lost its way in terms of kind of leading the charge and saying, hey, our society is getting sick and we need to be the ones to get involved.
Absolutely. If doctors are not going to do it, who is? I think we should make a whole separate show on how doctors have completely abdicated their duty. And okay, people may or may not listen to doctors, but if doctors could make the whole world practically lock down over very questionable circumstances, I think doctors could move the needle on this if they were literally hammering it home, telling the truth. You do eat too much. Sorry, you need to cut back on these bad foods. You need to be more active, write it at the top, and then think about medicines afterwards.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's lifestyle, before pushing pills. And I think that is what, we as physicians are not doing justice, for you all out there, is that we're not giving people the time to either 3 to 6 months or a year to adjust their lifestyle. We're just, and a lot of doctors are unfortunately pushing pills.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you have stress, absolutely huge spiritual, cultural crisis. Let's finish up with sleep, because I don't think that the current generations, which are suffering so much with metabolic diseases more so than previous generations, are sleeping enough at all. Their sleep cycles are not good. They fall into bad patterns.
Well, here's one thing that's without question going to happen. So sleep apnea is on the rise, and sleep apnea comes with obesity. So, you're having a lot of sleep apnea. And what is that? That's when you have these episodes during the night where you basically stop breathing, right? And so they have all these micro awakenings during the night, and you get these terrible restless sleeps. So we know that's on the rise. We also know that we're using these digital screens like phones and computers. We're watching them before bedtime. That creates poor sleep. We know lack of exercise creates poor sleep. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's getting worse for a number of reasons we just discussed, I think.
Yeah, we do know that just, the health benefits of sleep. I mean, I think I said this before in previous podcasts is, people get less than 6 hours of sleep. They don't let their body shut down and repair inflammation. And that leads to cortisol, and that leads to excess stress. And it really just tears through your body. And so it's so important. And, we just, in these days, and which I didn't do when I was younger, is sleep was just more natural. I think when I was younger, now,
We just,
daylights. And
Yeah.
I think that, there's other great ways to get sleep. I mean, I use melatonin. I think that has been really helpful for me to reset, sleep cycles.
Yeah.
But, I also try to avoid screen that causes, as you said, Ben, the dopamine rush.
That's a big one as well.
Yeah, and
Looking
it's
at their screens late at night.
oh yeah, that's
It's
the word.
terrible. We never had to deal with that.
Yeah, and it's sitting next to your bed, calling your name at night. I think anyone, if you put your phone outside your bedroom at night, you're going to be a little bit restless in bed, But if it's next to your bed at night, it's in the middle of the night, it's going to be calling your name to pick it up. And the minute that hits your eyes, boom, you're up.
Yeah.
I know it does for
At
me.
least dim the light if you're going to do it. That's really not at all.
Either way, it's not.
All right. Well, I hope that you found this discussion helpful. Some very important points. All any of us can do is try to be the best possible example for anybody around us, our family, our friends, our siblings, our children, grandchildren, whatever circumstance you're in. Try to always set the example, and hopefully others will follow. All right, everyone. Stay well, stay healthy. And once again, do check in the links down below for our unique channel where we talk about a lot of these issues. We will speak again next time.